My name is Andy Brubaker-Kapler, and I teach faith formation and culture at Anabaptist, Mennonite Biblical Seminary. And I'm a member of our seminary's Intercultural Competence and Undoing Racism team. It is my great privilege to introduce to you this afternoon our Martin Luther King Jr. weekend presenter this year, Dr. Daniel White Hodge. I've been in youth ministry for 25 years, and I've learned that to understand youth involves understanding culture and cultural influences. And music and media are probably the #1 influence on young people's lives. From early on in my ministry, I turned to a man named Walt Mueller for guidance and understanding about the role of music and media in the life of young people. And what drew me to Walt Mueller was that he said that if young people are listening to music, there's probably a reason for it. It's speaking to them in some kind of way. Someone I've turned to more recently is Dr. Hodge. I first heard Dr. Hodge a number of years ago at the Faith Forward conference in Chicago. I was immediately struck by his no-holds-barred approach to understanding music and young people. If it is addressed in hip-hop, it is something that the church needs to take seriously. The church has something to learn from hip-hop, not only about hip-hop, but from hip-hop, because the genre of hip-hop connects with people about topics that the church doesn't always know how to address. Two responses to hip-hop have been to either uncritically embrace it or to ignorantly dismiss it. But Dr. Hodge has a third way. As an educator, a Christian thinker, and a church leader, he plainly acknowledges the elements of hip-hop that are inconsistent with the gospel of Jesus. But he also boldly and wisely discerns hip-hop as a music form, an art form, and a cultural form that creatively conveys a gospel message of resistance to powers and practices that oppress. And it is at the intersection of a theology of culture and a gospel of justice, and it is in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that Dr. Hodge has committed much of his life's work and is here to speak with us this afternoon on the topic, the soul of hip-hop and the church in America. In addition to welcoming Dr. Hodge, I want to also welcome his wife, Emily, who is here with them from Chicago. Please join me in welcoming them.
Well, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here all the way from Chicago. Man, this is, even when I was that young, I still couldn't move like that. So, wow, you know. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the organizer, Nakisha. Thank you so much for having me out. Bob, thank you for setting all this up. And I appreciate the organizers of this. You have witnessed elements of hip-hop. Right? You have the DJ, you have the turntable, you have dance, you have MCing. Really all we're missing out of the core elements is graffiti art, an aspect of art, right? Hip-hop is an interesting culture because for so much of it, it is almost like a relic for some people. They can see it on the outside, and because of the long tentacles of capitalism, it has been made into a product. It has been made into an aspect of anything else of society that can be consumed. And so many consume it without any critical awareness of what it really is. The beat just sounds good, right? And so I'm hoping this afternoon to really help us better understand what hip-hop is. And so what I wanted to do is start a little bit further along the line. I'm not going to say leave you a history of hip-hop. You can go to Wikipedia for that. Although, if you take me for a class, do not use that as your primary source. Let me tell you that right now. But I've written a few things on the history of hip-hop, and I really wanted to hop into really the discussion and the dialogue that we find ourselves in right now. And for those of us who are ethnic minority and identify that way, for those of us who understand our ethnic lineage and our ethnic cultural identity, we are in a time of crisis right now. And this is a war. And while there may not be the vehicles of war standing outside of the building, make no mistake, as somebody who studies rhetoric in media, those weapons are in full swing every day. And so hip-hop, as much as I love it and sympathize with it, has also been used in that way, particularly in its Achilles heel, which is really its understanding and engagement with women. Sexism and misogyny is probably the worst parts of hip-hop culture. And so in that, I can't overlook that. I can't overlook that that's also in our administration as well. But hip-hop didn't invent it. When you think about the use of the gun, when you think about the use of violence, that is at the epicenter of male masculinity that stems all the way into the Old West and colonial America, for that matter, as well. Again, hip-hop didn't invent that. So it stands to reason why somebody like 50 Cent or Snoop or any of these other rappers would use the gun as a means of identifying themselves as a strong man. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of get into this a little bit. Hopefully you can see my screen here. Hopefully, and I got some cute things here, you know, to show y'all and all that good stuff. I'll put up my contact information at the end, and you can contact me. I got a podcast, Profane Faith, and I've done some stuff on American Gods, a podcast as well as there. So, you know, you can check me. I got some stuff online for you, you know what I'm saying? Let me start here with the context and background of this study. This, just to kind of give you a little bit of where I came from and a little bit about where I'm going with. This study really is for the current book that I have called Hip Hop's Hostile Gospel. It's the third line of books. The first one was Heaven Has a Ghetto, which essentially was my dissertation looking at Tupac Amaru Shakur and his gospel and theological message. Then I moved on to the soul of hip hop, and then I had the Hip Hop's Hostile Gospel. And then my newest book is Homeland Insecurity, excuse me, and that will be dropping hopefully this late spring, and that is looking at missions, particularly white colonialists who have come into our hoods on short-term missions. I cannot stand short-term missions. I don't want to step on anybody's foot, but they are a racist and colonist in approach, and so I've dedicated most of the book of going in on short-term missionary work, especially here domestically. And so it's a missiological approach to missions, but really using hip-hop as a vehicle in a form of better understanding the gospel in a new post-civil rights culture. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's a lot of college words, but y'all are smart, you know what I'm saying? This is just over 8,500 songs. I'm going to put my bags back here so y'all can still see me, right? Good? Okay, I'm making sure. So it's just over 8,500 songs, including album cover art. I think album and cover art is a system that's lost, unfortunately. I mean, I love iTunes, but I think oftentimes it's easy to just download one song and never understand what the concept of that entire album was. Right. That's what I love about The Roots. The Roots still puts out concept albums. And if you download the actual, or you see the entire album, right, you know, you can actually take in, like, who produced this, who put the song together. There's a lot that goes into production. It's not just a matter of just sitting behind a turntable and just spinning some, no. It goes much deeper than that. You gotta have some skills for that right there. First of all, you gotta have the right turntable. You can't just have no radio belt-driven turntable. You gotta have direct drive, all right? You gotta understand kind of the art of what this means for people. And see, hip-hop was created out of an oppressive state because young ghetto kids couldn't afford a $3,000 Roland JV 990. But they could use their body as an instrument. They could go and borrow somebody else's turntable, grab the speakers over here, let's put it together, and twist songs and put loops together in a way from songs that were never meant to be used in that way. So I wanted to look at that. I also combined this with 30 qualitative interviews, combined with 50 informal active interviews. This is for all you scholars in the room. I'm using a theoretical framework from John Michael Spencer. If you've never read anything from John Michael Spencer, I highly recommend it. He's a scholar, just a very overlooked scholar, unfortunately. And this theomusicology is really about what I'm trying to do, is understand what is the music, what does the art actually say? So often we see lyrics and then we don't know where those lyrics came from. And it irks me now because oftentimes people go like, for example, Kendrick. People know Kendrick Lamar, and now all of a sudden, right, you know, Kendrick is like, oh my gosh, hip-hop theology. Look, we've been talking about hip-hop theology for long before Kendrick came around. Kendrick's a great guy. I'll get to him in a second. But my point being is that you can't just look at the lyric and think you got something. Does that make sense? Especially in this consumerist environment. Because some folks will say stuff just to say stuff, you'll be thinking, oh my gosh, they're this, they're that. Like, no. Let's see the entire picture. Theomusicology gives you the entire picture of what is going on. So that was the framework of that. And so A large part of my theological engagement is at the sacred, the secular, and the profane. I do not believe that you can have all of everything and then think that you're actually doing the work. For me, I find a lot of God, a lot of Christianity at the intersections of those environments. I think it's no different than, the old saying that says, if you constantly look up and focus on things that are positive, you'll miss what's right down below you. But if you constantly have your head in the mud and you're looking down all the time, you'll constantly miss what's up. So I try to look right in the middle and see the good, the bad, and the ugly, the yin and the yang. Because the messier it gets, the messier and the uglier it becomes, that's when God has a chance to do what God does. And that's part of what hip-hop is about doing. See, so often here in North America, we try to make things, that's my problem with, Christianity today, particularly here in North America, is that we want to explain things away with answers, rather than actually trying to sit. We are so consumed with head knowledge that we have forgotten about the body. The embodiment of theology inside of us, the Spirit of God within us, we have forgotten that. Dance is a form of that. Mm-hmm. See, Christianity is essentially an African religion. And we have lost a lot of those connections to our African homeland. When the Catholic Church was centralized in Rome, it became a centralized figure of what Christianity should be. But the Miaponites and the Diophysites and all those other Catholic churches that didn't fall into a Roman, Greco-Roman environment got left by the wayside. And so our churches have tended to look a certain way because that's what colonialism does. Hip-hop is breaking away from that. So it looks foreign to us. For example, the use of Egyptology and symbology within Christianity. It's a strong and long-standing tradition. But a lot of us have been taught that anything with triangles and stars on it is demonic. And we just overlook it all together. Because again, we're in the head and not understanding what God is doing in the body. And so hip-hop is about in that engagement. Now, I know for some of us, it's like, oh my gosh, who did they invite here? Like, what is going on? He's already talking about short-term missions. God's not, that's not what I signed up for. Well, just hold on. Hold on to that dissonance just a little bit longer. We're going to go on a little journey. As I always tell my students, I'm not here to get you to agree with me, because I agree with me. And that's cool. That's good stuff. But I am here to help us think a little bit more critically about some things that are right in front of us. Oftentimes, most of us think of hip-hop like this, right? Consumeristic. Foolish hip-hop, stuff that just sells to real records, right? If it's doo-doo on a stick, that's what's made. Doo-doo on a stick, doo-doo on a stick, right? Everybody walking around there, doo-doo on a stick. That's a song right there. I can go on Spotify and sell all kinds of stuff right now, you know what I'm saying? Spotify just went public, too. That's a whole other conversation, right? Spotify going public, record sales, all that stuff. But most of us think about hip-hop in this manner. I don't. Yes, this is a part of it. You cannot ignore this. Most of the young people that I engage with listen to this style and manner of hip-hop. We are currently in a state of hip-hop that's called party and strip club rap. Yes, you have artists like Common. Yes, you have artists like Kanye. I'll get to Kanye in a minute. Yes, you have artists like Kendrick, right? But at the end of the day, so much of what most people want to consume is the party and the strip club. And so it's easy for people to critique. Hip-hop makes it a very easy thing to critique. Most people don't understand what partying really is about. So they say, oh my gosh, partying, and that's blasphemy, that's debauchery, right? Good King James Version word, right? It's Babylon, right? It's like, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. Let's keep talking. Let's keep moving. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Brother Tupac. I'm talking about Diggable Planets. If you don't even know who Diggable Planets are, you gotta go back. I know y'all know. I know the DJ. I know we already know who you do. I'm talking about Brother Kendrick. Y'all know something about Kendrick? I talk about this, I narrate this in the book, and I talk a little bit about how he was laid hands on in South Central, from Snoop, Dre, the West Side Prophets, Compton Most Wanted, all these cats from the West Coast. If you don't know who some of those are, they're out there, right? These were the Watts Prophets, right? These were cats from the West Coast, where I grew up in California, that actually had a socially conscious word. And they looked at Kendrick and they literally laid hands on this brother and said, carry on the mantle. The Spirit of God is upon you. This is what Kendrick has been commissioned to do. All right? So a lot of people don't know that. So this new album that's right, this damn he's talking about, and he's putting out, he's giving you his heart and his soul. He is taking up essentially what Tupac started. We'll get to Tupac in a minute too. Talking about Lauryn Hill. Yeah, man, Lauryn Hill, she got some stuff. Talking about Chance the Rapper right out of Chicago. Eve's got some good work. J. Cole, all right. My brother Lecrae's getting woke. Shoot, look, I ain't gonna front. I am no fan of Christian holy hip hop. Not at all. It's fundamentalist, it is colonialistic. But Lecrae has actually stepped up, and his last 3 albums, and you'll see this, you follow him on Twitter, you actually see his fan base pushing back. Because most of his fan base are white evangelicals. And they don't want to be reminded about how racist they are. And so Lecrae is doing that. He's reminding them, like, wait a minute, y'all put me up here. It was interesting. I was actually at a Lecrae conference about 3 years ago. This was right around the time that Michael Brown, the case, and all that stuff was happening. And one of the verdicts that came back, and one of the police officers, the police chief, they were going to be charged. It was all this talk. It was actually a youth ministry, conference camp, right? So I'm walking around, just hanging out and having conversations, and I'm overhearing youth pastors talk about Michael Brown. And about how people like that really only understand the butt of a gun. And that maybe 5 slugs made him understand a little bit better, right? Oh. This was coming from youth pastors, people who minister in the gospel. But that night, I'm seeing Lecrae, and all these white bodies are jumping up and dancing to that. I find that fascinating, that we can popularize and consume blackness when it comes to the actual worth of black bodies and value in that. We tend to put that to the side. But I'm loving where Lecrae is going right now. And I'm not hating on all holy Christian hip hop. I think propaganda is great. I think my man, he's out of Seattle. White guy sounds like Eminem. I'm forgetting his name. Gosh, dog. Anyway, there's some good artists out there, but so much of it. Oh man, I can say I go in on the book. You can go in the book and you can read it. I even like Brother Kanye, but don't get twisted. 2003, 2005. That's what it is for me right there. Because during the Jesus Walk tours, he actually hired pastors to come out, and they were having altar calls, right? This is what's going on at his concerts. I mean, I don't know where he's at now, but there's some interesting things that are out there. What I'm learning is that it's not either or. It's not bad or it's not all good. Because we were to say that, we would have to really look at Christianity. Because at the end of the day, nothing or no one is above critique. That make sense? Yep. So let's get into this. The roots of hip hop, right? We got the roots of it coming out as a culture. A lot of this stuff is rooted in ancient African Christianity. Part of it is consciousness. Who are you? How do you understand who you are as yourself? Now we call some of this stuff, right, emotional intelligence, right? Being behaviorally healthy. But no, the root of it is being woke. That's being conscious. Who are you? Using your third eye theology, right, is about using the knowledge that comes from your head, the light that is given to you from God. And in African Christianity, oh my gosh, it's not just a male God, there's a female God. Oh my goodness. Now you done lost me there. Oh man. It's difficult for us to see God, right, in a feminine perspective. But consciousness is being that woke and knowing who you are. Not only that, you've also got self-awareness. And self-awareness about your time and space, where are you at? How do you fit into the ancestry? Who are your ancestral levels? How do those connect? And then how does that stuff connect back to the sacred word? How do we then understand that? And how do we continue to build and grow from and in within that? Community? It's all about community. Right now we're in community. We're going to have a discussion. We're going to dialogue about some of these things. Hip-hop is powerful. I can't tell you how many videos I went to when I was doing my research that were just like this, with some MCs, with some great DJs, and then we're just talking about, lamenting about pain of what we're going through. When I had the privilege about 11 years ago to go out to Paris and do some work out there on hip-hop, and I was teaching a study abroad course. Now, I don't speak no French. I didn't even know what exit was. Like, I'm getting off the plane, and they were like, sorting. Like, sorting? Where's the exit? I didn't want to know where to go, right? But when I got to the young brothers and sisters, and out there, which is where we're quickly headed to here in the United States, it's like the suburbs is the hood, all right? The inner city is the wealthy part. That's really big time happening in Chicago, gentrification, all that stuff. That's for another lecture when I come back, and we'll talk more about that. But when I got there, didn't speak a lick of French. But what I did speak was NWA. What I did speak was Dr. Dre the Chronic. What I did speak was that universal hip-hop language of pain and suffering and lament. How do we connect with that? How do we talk about that? How do we talk about our pain? So often we want to pray things away in what Anthony Pinn calls a theologization of the hermeneutic of lament. In other words, we want to just say, God's got it, and never actually deal with the real mess. That's problematic. Hip-hop says, no, we ain't going to do that. We're going to engage in this. In fact, Anthony Pinn, in his great book, Black Suffering, looking at African-American theology, in that space, he talks and says we need a nitty-gritty hermeneutic. We need to be able to get down to the nitty-gritty of life. That's what hip-hop does. We've also got spirituality. Now, I'll be the first to admit, not all of hip-hop spirituality falls within the Christian canon. But at the end of the day, there is an aspect of spirituality. If I can have a young person talking about some aspect of spirituality, we can have a really, really engaged conversation. There's also aspects of unity. Yeah, unity. That's a tough thing to come around these days, right? And here's the thing. Just because we're unified, don't mean we agree. So often, that's part of what happens, right? It's like, you be unified, right? It's like, you see this happening, particularly within Christian colleges across the United States. Right now in Chicago, Moody's going through its changes right now. Moody Bible Institute, Bible College, right? Got a president who said, hey, I want to have inclusion. I want to include authors that are non-white. Well, he's just resigned because he's been pushed out. So, right, can we disagree? No, we cannot. That's not unity. Right? That's just an abuse of power. But again, that's for a different talk. And then, of course, it's about love of God and love of self. These are the elements of which I judge hip-hop by, that I critique it by. Is it espousing this? How are we talking about this? So many artists right now are about the money. See, when you come from poverty and somebody offers you $5 million, it's not as easy as we're making it out to be. This is what Jadakiss told me. He said, look, bro, right now, my family is old money. My daughter, and then when she has kids, those are going to be old money. I just bought my mama a house. And I'm trying to tell him, but yeah, but you bought it on the backs of women and talking about what all the stuff. He said, man, he said, what you want me to do? Continue to work at $8 an hour, $9 an hour? It's not as easy as we make it out to be, right? If we just get rappers talking about positive, conscious things. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, right? I don't have an answer. This is complex stuff. Because things are never as easy as we outline them to be. You never. That's the great thing about the classroom. It works out in the classroom. Dang, how come it never work out in real life? So the roots of hip-hop are complex, but this is what I look at. This is what I engage with. Let me throw some definitions your way. Here's one of them. This is a working definition. I've used this over and over and over. I got to give credit to Phil Jackson and Avram Smith, who really put out one of the first hip-hop books on religion called The Hip-Hop Church. If you haven't read it, it came out about 13 years ago with IVP. It's a really well-done book and looking at the hip-hop church. And so I built off of that definition, kind of added a few things myself. So hip-hop is an urban subculture, and urban, that's a whole different interesting word in and of itself, because again, the hood ain't the hood anymore. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who was telling me that he's in Los Angeles, so he's telling me that places like Riverside and Pomona that were once like all these rich suburbs are having major gang problems. Some of the same gang problems that you would have saw in the inner city back in the late 70s and 80s. What does that tell you, right? So I know I've got to change that word too. Urban subculture that seeks to express a lifestyle, here we go, attitude and or urban individuality. Hip-hop at its core, not the commercialization and commodity that it has become in certain respects, rejects dominant forms of culture and society and seeks to increase a social consciousness along with a racial and ethnic pride. Thus, hip-hop uses rap music, dance, music production, emceeing, allegory as vehicles to send and fund its message of social, cultural, and political resistance to dominant structures of norms. So this is at the core and part of the heart of hip-hop. One young brother, though, I was teaching this because I have a class in the fall on hip-hop and culture and theology, and he was like, look, bro, he said, I feel you on that, but at the end of the day, so much of hip-hop now is the dominant structure. So what now? Because back in the day when I was growing up, you had to actually, well, when you went to the record store, I don't know if y'all remember going to the record store. I just remember going to the record store and having to look for your artists. In like Warehouse and Tower Records, I know that's foreign to those of you under 35, like what? Warehouse and Tower Records, Borders, right? Borders used to carry. You had to go and look for these albums. They were, you could not find, I remember when Ice-T, back when Ice-T was Ice-T, not like Ice-T now, but Ice-T back in the day was about God. In fact, he's warning you with songs like 6 in the morning. And he's telling you about what's going to happen at 6 in the morning, because this is right around the time that the drugs war started back in South Central places in the West Coast. And they would come right homes at 6 in the morning. So he's telling you what's going to be happening at 6 in the morning, but he's also telling you the consequence of when you continue that lifestyle. Does that make sense? See, so today, though, now hip-hop is all-consuming. It's everywhere. Use it to sell dog food, right? Use it to sell chairs and all kind of crazy stuff. And so it's out there. And now people, again, have consumed it without really understanding what is going on with it. Who are the role models? And that's part of the challenge that we find ourselves right now. What is truth? That's tomorrow. You come out tomorrow, we're going to be bringing all those things down. A little workshop for you. So it's resistance. So that's what I came back to. I said, young brother, I said, it's about resistance then. If it means even resisting its own self. Common had a whole song that's about I used to love her. He's talking about hip-hop. He's talking about how, you know, this art of mine that I fell in love with, I don't know what's going on with it. I don't even know if I recognize it anymore. Now, he puts it in the lens of a woman and all that, a man caring from a woman, that's a whole, again, I get it, there's still a whole era of, or space of hypermasculinity within hip-hop. We have to deal with that. The point being is that at the end of the day, he's critically inquiring into his own culture. Because when you think about it, one of the things that scared so many parts of white America, besides, as Kelly Brown Douglas says, a black man sitting in the space in the White House that has typically been reserved for white men, besides that, was the fact that hip-hoppers were showing up in large numbers to the White House. Yeah? Did you know that? Jay-Z, Beyonce? I mean, those are moguls, right? And then those are, I mean, people think about it like, oh my gosh, how's this, what? This is crazy. America's going to hell in a handbasket. So hip-hop, resistance. Well, let's look at rap, because there's a difference between hip-hop and rap. So this is rap. Rap is the main medium of the hip-hop culture that brings, here we go, definition, value, understanding, and appreciation of what? Social isolation. When you're in the hood, you socially isolated. Straight up, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. In Chicago, we have what's called food deserts. I live on the west side of Chicago, and my daughter and I needed to stop and get something to eat. She was feeling a little faint. I said, okay, let's stop by the little store. And she was like, Dad, all they got is like junk food in here. I was like, oh, she loves junk food. I like junk food. But it's like, that's ultimately what happens in a lot of these neighborhoods. You are isolated. You're gone, right? Social isolation, economic hardship, political demoralization, because politicians, both liberal and conservative, only show up to our neighborhoods when they want votes. Don't get me wrong, I got no love for conservatives, but I dang sure ain't got a lot of love for Democrats either. That's another conversation. I know when they have you back, we'll talk about, you know, Hillary and all the hot sauce. I mean, come on, really? Oh, no. It took Black Lives Matter 3 times to get Bernie to talk about Black Lives Matter. Like, anyway, all right, I'll stop. Political demoralization and cultural exploitation. I mean, think about it. Everybody want to be hood until the cops show up. Greg Tate puts it like this: everything but the burden, what white folks are stealing from black culture. And he says it like this: everybody wants to sag and wear baggy jeans or wear some, you know, the chucks. Again, until that race car shows up and it's like, nope, wasn't me. I mean, I think about Janet Jackson and that famous, now infamous, right, Super Bowl production with your boy Justin Timberlake. You know, it's like Justin wanted to be black so bad, right? Getting phased and getting hooked up, lines and everything. Now it's like, shoot, it looks like, well, I ain't gonna say what it looks like now. He's a talented brother, but nonetheless. But here we go. Cultural exploitation endured by, here we go, most ghetto and poor white communities. Oh, on my way down here to Indiana from Chicago, I seen some great ghetto black folks up in Chill. The white projects, trailer parks. We never want to engage with that topic of poor, marginalized, disenfranchised white people who actually outnumber black and Latinx people in poverty 3 to 1 in this country, and that number is growing. You wait till the coal industry folds, because it's folding, right? Nobody in the world is going to coal, right? But that's what's happening. Manufacturing jobs. I have a friend of mine who works in artificial intelligence, and he says within the next 10 years, most jobs that people are doing right now are going to be automated. They're automated. Think about Amazon. You just need a couple of people to run the machines that are getting things that are sending you nice little trinkets and whatnot. Hey, I ain't gonna lie, I'm in the beast as well. I love me some Amazon. I'm a whore for Amazon. I'm like, oh shoot, Amazon, oh, take me out. It ain't everything, Amazon. Shoot. Amazon putting me, I'm just keeping it, can I keep it 100, you know what I'm saying? I'm just keeping it real because at the end of the day, Amazon's put a lot of people out of business. Think about Uber. Think about our consumerist mentality. So these things are happening at an exceptional rate. And so poor white communities are growing in number. But the face of poverty is racial. It's black and brown. And it's usually black women. Here's the second part of the definition of rap. Thus, rap is the musical expression that combines the oral communication of its culture. Rap also captures and esteems the ghetto poor existence and as valid and real to all people of color, including many poor whites. Rap brings the revenue which fuels the culture and its message. And so ultimately, this is where the rub happens. Because we live in a society where money rules the roost. You can't get past it. Unless you want to go out and live in the mountains, you know, get off the grid and all that stuff. But even that, because trust me, I've thought about it, but even that, you have to have money. Who's going to buy the land? Where's the solar panels going to come from? How are you going to harvest all that water? We can put it in, right? So, at the end of the day, money rules the roost. Damn, what the heck's going on here? So for me, I want to look at this thing, much like Dr. Charles Long puts it. He says it like this: religion is thus understood to be pervasive, not only in religious institutions, right, but in all dimensions of cultural life. So this is the approach I'm looking at. How do we look at God and find God in the profane? I believe Jesus lived at that intersection. We'll meet Jesus here in a minute, but this is crazy stuff, right, going on. Dr. Robin Silverman puts it like this: what happens, however, when the encounter with the numinous, that's just a fancy word for spirituality, right? For those of you who are not seminary trained, the religious experience can no longer find adequate expression in the traditional religious institutions provided by the culture. In other words, when my theological highway has run out, and I've done all the things that I've been prescribed to do, what do I do next? Yep. Hip-hop says, come, let's at least reason together. We may not have the answer, but at least we can sit in community and become better aware of who we are, how we sit in this mess of things. Making sense? Some crazy stuff, but you think, man, hip-hop theology, damn, what the hell? What are you talking about, man? For a second here, this is one of my favorite album covers because I feel like it really illustrates, and I know it's a little hard to see here, so I'll explain it. This is from the Section 80 album cover of Kendrick Lamar, and this really captures essentially where I'm trying to go and where we're trying to understand, because it is contentious to be at the intersections of the sacred, the secular, and the profane. In this album cover right here, you have a Holy Bible up on the corner right. But not only that, you have some aspects and paraphernalia over there of weed. Now, I don't know if it's legal in the state. It's not legal in the state, right? No, legal in the state? No, legal in the state. Oh, it's not legal in the state. All right. Not yet, right, exactly. Not yet. Then you have sexual paraphernalia. Then you have bullets and a gun. Kendrick is trying to get you to understand that, again, one, life is not that simple. Spiritual attainment is not that simple. I love my brother who was talking about, man, I'm choosing between, right, good and evil. I mean, all of us are tempted. All of us. Even the most holy of thou. Like, oh my God, I always used to say, man, even the Pope sneaks a little vodka every now and then. Like, shoot, he got you. Shoot, I would. So at the end of the day, how then does God show up in those spaces? Like I said, the messier it gets, the more God has a chance to show up. And this is exactly what Kendrick is trying to get us to do. Let me talk real briefly about some of the societal shifts, how we got here, and then I will play a couple tracks, and then I'm going to definitely open it up for questions, because I know my time will be nigh here. I want to take it back to World War II, because I think World War II, and there's more to it, and I outlined this in other texts and whatnot, but I'll start at World War II, because World War II was really a major societal shift within the United States. It was the last time that as a society things were binary. Those people over there are bad, we over here are good, and we're going to make life better. Okay? It's the reason why Hollywood continues to put out, every year, we have a new film on something aspect of World War II. Because it makes sense. Life makes sense. When people talk about going back, they want to go back to this era. I ate at a cafe this morning. I love the food, right? You know, it was the Mayberry Cafe, right? People want to go back to those In the history of the United States, there's been a relative amount of about maybe 14 years of peace. The rest of this time has been war and fighting. When you think about economic depravity, when you think about how the elite whites in the 1830s and 1840s convinced poor whites who couldn't even pay for the shirt on their back, that if the slaves were free, that somehow they'd take their jobs. It's like, oh no, they already got your job. But somehow that concept of divide and conquer has been there. World War II, though, manifested it because it was one of the first times that we now have what I like to call college word transmediation, digital and electronic communication. By the time we get to the 60s and we see the Vietnam War, because so much of our culture is shaped around conflict, we see what war really is. People are seeing that it's not so blind, not so good. Like, why are we over there anyways to begin with? Why did Johnson wait so long to even tell the public? Why do we continue to do, wait a minute, why? Oh, the good and the bad? Oh my goodness. And so by the time we reach the 60s, most cultural theorists, most sociologists say we have a major shift in our society. 1960s, the postmodern, the post-soul transference. In other words, we have a decline, a shift, not a decline, but a distinct shift in the way we think. Think about the film or the television series, All in the Family. All in the Family captures Archie Bunker is this relic that sits right in his chair, right? He sits right in his chair, talking about it. Think about his son-in-law, right? You know, called him meathead all the time. He is representative of this cultural war that has been going on for quite some time in this country. He rebels against the system, wears his hair long, talks about against the Vietnam War. I loved All in the Family. All in the Family was a poignant, it had so many messages in there. Jefferson spun out from it, Maude, I know I'm dating myself here, but a lot of television shows came out of that era. But that was representative of what was happening in the 1960s. And those of you who lived through the 1960s know. By the time we reached 1968 and 1969, a lot of historians say that we almost lost our entire civility in this country because of the amount of instability that existed. So what happens? Well, now we have a burst of popular culture and the rise of post-industrialism. The 1970s de-industrialized the United States. Back in the day, you used to be able to go to college and come home in the summer and work at some kind of steel or meal plant. Those don't exist anymore. Those are robots. Those are controlled by automation. Those don't exist. And so those jobs, where do people go? I can't even afford college anymore. Between 1973 and 2003, there was a 482% increase in college tuition. 483%. Right? Just in that span of time. But by the time we get to the 80s began to wash over all of this stuff and say, just buy, just consume. It's the way to live. I mean, think about it. You know, think about even the person, the maker of the DeLorean, you know, car man. You don't know what DeLorean is. DeLorean was the car from Back to the Future. You know, Back to the Future, that's the car in there. But the only reason DeLorean is popular is because of that movie, because the guy went bankrupt. A lot of people went bankrupt. A lot of people lost a lot of money during the 80s because the 80s signified the rise of popular culture. 1981 was when MTV went online. And we began. Right now you have videos that are talking about video killed the radio star. We no longer have this imaginative space where we can think about what's going on. Now we have to visually see it. Now, I'm going to get into all the psychology of all of that stuff, but there was, again, another shift that led us into the 1990s with the rise of critical inquiry in the information age. 1995 was the first time I heard about Netscape Navigator. Right? You know what I'm saying? America Online. You still got an email address from that. I want to know you. I want to shake your hand. You still got America Online. There you go. See, it's still alive and kicking. I was like, what's online? Y'all remember them old modems? You had to get up and then I would get pissed because then somebody, you know, it was two-way calling. It would kick you off the internet. Oh, man. I still remember Napster, the original Napster. But those were the days, right? Now you had, I remember having to go in high school into the library and hand look for books in that card catalog that was stank and funky, but I still had to go in there anyway. Right, books, right, exactly. My daughter can sit behind her laptop right now on her iPad, which is where she's at right now, on her iPad, and look up a lot of the information that a lot of us that would get handheld, have to hold on to physical stuff. The 1990s changed that. Property in California went from very affordable to, by the time 1994, 1995 hit, to almost unbearably expensive. And really hasn't changed since. Most people started getting fax lines. Y'all remember that? Fax lines? I remember in my area, because area codes are big where I come from, right? We were 408. You were getting tattoos of 408, 408, 408. And then the thing came down, we were 831. We're like, wait. 831? That don't even sound right. 408 had the whole one in 831. I'm still 408, right? But this was the shift. But the big daddy and big mommy of all shifts was coming, 9/11. Whether you believe it was an inside job or not, that's for another talk. But the culture of terrorism began. Laws that you wouldn't think would be in place prior to 9/11 began to put in place. You ever read the Patriot Acts, all three of them? Those Patriot Acts got put into place like that. You know how long it takes, right? Legislation to get president. Those things were wish lists, no-knock seizures, right? Being able to come and take your rights. But somebody from the federal government deems this crowd a threat to U.S. and national security, they can arrest and detain us all indefinitely. This is all in the Patriot Act. So 9/11 changed everything. One of the television shows that captured the shift was the television series 24. And it blurred the lines of who's good and who's bad. We were no longer in World War II, because now 24 showed the U.S. being just as bad as whoever we were painting as the enemy. You see what I'm saying? So hip-hop came up during all of these shifts. Actually, in my class, I take hip-hop all the way back to 5th and 6th century Africa, Central and Western Africa. I ain't got time for that now. But for the lack of that, 1971 was a year that most scholars will agree that the emergence of what we now define as hip-hop rappers and that came out 1971, 1972. But hip-hop culture, the people who were growing up, came up through these shifts. Think about coming through an analog world into a digital world. Into a world where we no longer, like, what is Wi-Fi? What Bluetooth? And then ultimately, we are in a state now where we have white nationalism, white fear, and a white Christian state. Make no mistake. That's where we're headed with some of these laws. Hip-hop is speaking to that right now. Let me show you a brief clip from Brother Tupac, and then I want to play you a song that kind of captures a little bit about what I'm talking about, and then, like I said, we'll open it up for some questions. We still good, Nikisha, on time? All right, we good. She said she gave me a thumb, sort of. So, all right. Let me show you this clip here, and then, we'll come back.
We are part of the black community. I'm a thug, and I rap about the oppressed, fight back. Yeah, my raps are filled with rage. We got to be logical. If I know that in this hotel room they have food every day, and I'm knocking on the door every day to eat, and they tell me, they open the door, let me see the party, let me see like they throwing salami all over. I mean, just like throwing food around, but telling me there's no food. You know what I'm saying? Every day, I'm standing outside trying to sing my way in. You know what I'm saying? We are hungry, please let us sing. We are hungry, please let us sing. After about a week, that song was going to change. We hungry, we need some food. After 2-3 weeks, it's like, give me a little food, what y'all doing? After a year, then you just like, you know what I'm saying? I'm picking the lock, coming through the door blasting, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're hungry, you reach your level, you don't want anymore. We asked 10 years ago. We was asking with Panthers. We was asking with that, with civil rights movement. We was asking, now those people that were asking, they're all down in jail. So now what do you think we're going to do? Ask. I put my gun away, they grab my AK, let's get the AK. I can't call it, I'm spun out alcoholic, never niggas under pressure.
Right. So what do you think they're going to do? Ask? So this post-civil rights culture that we're living in, and these are students that are born really after 1995, and really now I'm starting new research looking at young people born after 2001, have grown up in a state of war. It's a generation raised in the ruins of the Reagan crack cocaine era. You know anything about the drug wars and how that's been? Yeah, no. That was messed up. My mom was addicted to crack. I raised myself for a couple of years on the streets. And that was devastating to see my mom, who protested, one of the only Latinas that admitted into the Berkeley chapter of the Black Panther movement back in 1969. To go from that at the top of social consciousness and awareness is the almost antithesis of that, which is a brutal addiction. And to see that, and to see what it did to other people. I sold drugs for like a week until my auntie came and wanted to perform sexual favors for me to give her the stuff, and I was like, I can't do this. Reagan crack cocaine era, but they were raised in those ruins. A generation raised in the womb of media culture. Media is everywhere right now. Everywhere. It's coming so fast at us right now that it's hard to distinguish what's true and what's fact. Most news outlets have to correct themselves because they're trying to be the first. I don't know if you remember this or if you know anything about Los Angeles, you know that Los Angeles loves to film car chases. Loves it. Loves it to death. You know what started that? Your boy O.J. Simpson, 1994. That slow-speed car chase was covered by KCAL 9 News, a small, almost independent television station that most people didn't even know who the heck was KCAL 9. But because they own the rights to that video, they've made millions. And now you can be just a fool driving fast, and it's like, well, shoot, man, let me get on television. Now everybody, I mean, they were shut down because the president could have killed somebody. Like, hold on, we got to show you this car chase. Media is everywhere. Generation raised in the ambiguity of morals, ethics, and social values. Which way is up, as the old Richard Pryor film talked about? Which way do I go from here? In sociological theory and concerns, it says, I am in enemy. I don't know where to go because the mores of society have told me one thing, but I'm seeing other people make it this way. So why are you telling me to live right and tell the truth when you yourself are not doing it? This generation is empowered by behavior. They're watching more than they're hearing. Generation raised during one of the greatest shifts in Christian faith. It's a big shift going on right now. Things are not like they used to be, you know, it's not Mayberry. You know, the cafe's there, but it ain't Mayberry no more. Raised in a generation of post 9/11 America. That says it all. Black Lives Matter is on its way to become what's called a terrorist organization. Once it's labeled at the federal level as a terrorist organization, anyone who's associated with that can be detained, apprehended, and or killed because this is where we're at right now. And there's strong legislations and movement towards Black Lives Matter, BLM chapters that are independently run that are being moved towards them. This is happening. Generation raised on technology as normality and identity. This generation knows no difference. When I take a picture, my daughter automatically knows that, can I see it? Right. Can I see it? They don't know about no film, no development, no 110 Kodak cameras. What? You don't know nothing about that. You don't know nothing about the struggle. You got to put it in there and hope you took a good picture. Hope you didn't get the exposure wrong. You know what I'm saying? Nothing about that. Crazy stuff. Generation raised on what I like to define, well, actually it's George Ritzer who calls it the McDonaldization thesis. Efficiency, calculability, control, and effectiveness. That's how most of our lives are run right now, including how we train in seminaries. Of course, not this one, but other seminaries. As a social normality and ways of doing life. Cookie cutter pastors, MDiv programs that just churn people out because, right, we have to learn the 3 systematic theologies. There's nothing else, ever. Was never anything else. Generation raised with likes and follows. You haven't watched an amazing, powerful documentary by Frontline called Generation Like? You gotta go watch it. It's free. You just download it right now. Like I said, it is everywhere. Generation raised to organize and critically think. The reason why Ferguson was put on the map was because McDonald's had Wi-Fi on Ferguson Avenue. Wow. And people went out and uploaded videos of what was going on. I had to look on the map when I first heard of Michael Brown. I said, where the heck is Ferguson? And people say, that's a suburb, right out of, St. Louis. Funk and Meyer, that stuff's everywhere. Racism, that's everywhere. A generation raised to seek Jesus unfiltered, raw, and not religion. So let me give you a song real quick here about how this looks like. This is from, I'm going to pull the lyrics up real quick. So before I transition from this, again, this is a post-civil rights culture. This is kind of just some of the characteristics that came out of the data and the research. I mean, I can go into more, and that's part of what my new publication, Homeland and Security, is talking and looking at. But nevertheless, there's some things here, right? How do we, particularly those of us who profess Christianity and think about living out that Great Commission, how do we live in this? How do we engage with this? Those are questions. I don't have no answers. So whoever gets on the mic will say, Dan, how do you propose them? I don't have no answers right now. I'm in it with you, all right? I'm here to sound the alarm. I'm in it with you right now. So I don't think a lot of people know. They say they know. They'll sell some books. But I don't know it like that. So does that make sense? right, let's move on to this song. So this is The Sacred, the Profane, and the Secular by EDI and Young Noble. They were connected with Tupac. And I wanted to play this song for you because I thought it really captured. I put the lyrics up so hopefully you can see it. There's no four-letter words. So I said, oh, thank God. So, well, we can do that. But again, I want to come back. So I'll, next time we'll get into strong language, but not today. But I want you to kind of see this. I'm going to play the track. I want you to kind of listen to what they're talking about, okay? When you can begin to get at that level of theological inquiry, I believe God really begins to show up and says, man, where does that meet up? I mean, think about the lineage of Jesus Christ and who was in his lineage. I mean, again, that sacred, secular, and profane is there. It is engaging with that. And this is part of what hip-hop is trying to do. And this whole song right here was on the heels of several people dying and several legislative, this was published, I think, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So again, when you look at the broad spectrum of where these songs came from, they're trying to wrestle with some serious things that I think we, as a church community, should be engaging and wrestling with as well. Does that make sense? Let me end on this, then we'll open it up. So looking at it forward and thinking about it, let me end on this, and then, like I said, I'll show you one quick video on Tupac, and then we'll open up for Q&A. I think everybody kind of has different stages and whatnot, and I think prior to coming into a relationship with God, and prior to being understanding, we're kind of out of an unconscious state, right? I mean, I know myself going to school and learning more, I became more conscious, more aware, right? Stage 2 brings us to, right, this consciousness, this area of churching. You know, when I came back to the church and I began to understand more about what God was doing in my life and theologically, I started showing up at church, right? You start going every week. Start showing up, maybe not even every week. In black tradition, you go on Wednesday, they got some on Thursday night, they got on Friday night, you got vespers on Sunday, right? And then you go to church on Sunday and you ain't getting out till like right about now, you know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm just simply saying, church happens. Barna Research, Journal of Behavioral Studies all say that anytime somebody has some kind of metamorphic change in their life, those of you who work out, you know this. You know that if you just keep doing the same thing, your body gets used to it. So what I like to call trail horse Christianity. Trail horses don't do nothing but follow the lead horse. You don't have to think, you don't have to do anything, you just sit on the horse and just go riding. Within 2 to 3 years of somebody becoming a new Christian, a new born-again person, they become traditionalized, churched. Things begin to make sense. And unfortunately, most of our church congregations are there. It is what Paul describes as the milk of the gospel. It is as we begin to understand the gospel, it's just in its simplest forms. You think, well, man, Jesus said that the gospel should be understood by children. He was saying that in prose and in context, because a lot of the stuff that he's actually talking about is very complex. I love Jesus because Jesus says, man, there's a lot of other stuff I can't even tell y'all right now. I can't even, you know what I'm saying? I love that about the Great Commission. It says even before that many who were with him doubted. Doubted. Like they cursed him and doubted, like, oh, I don't believe Jesus. Jesus is still moving forward. If you keep on living long enough, I always say you're going to have your Job moment. And doubt comes in. Right? You say, what's a Job moment? Just keep it, it's coming. Just trust me, it's coming. Where nothing makes sense. Where everything is just kind of like, oh my gosh, I did this, I wouldn't fast and I wouldn't pray, and nothing is coming together. I'm doubting that this even works. Now, what most church folks try to do is bring you back into stage 3. Well, just read your Bible. Great. How's that going to help me get a bus pass? Because I ain't get to work. If I don't get to work, I can't pay for the kids. What's that going to do? nitty-gritty hermeneutic. I say, if you can move past and begin to hold on a little bit, God does some amazing things in the mystery of who God is. Part of what Christianity has done is explain things away. So in many regards, Friedrich Nietzsche was right. God is dead. We've killed God away. There's no mystery about who God is. We know how far the moon is from the sun. We know how far the earth is from the sun. We know all these things, right? We think, well, what's the point? Most young people say, look, I really don't even need church anymore. I can go online to YouTube. I can go download a podcast, and I'm straight. There's so much that we built up around information, rather than the relationship and the community of engagement, and particularly what does that mean to be a body of believers in the face of social injustice and social inequity that exists right now. I always say if we can keep pushing and looking, we enter the enlightenment of who God is. These are tough areas because they appear to be unstable. They appear in a place of suspended animation, and most of us don't like to be there. I mean, tell the truth. Most of us like control in our lives. Or we like the version of control that exists in our lives. I like to know what time to get up. I like to know there. I want to go over here. My GPS map, man, I would have been lost. Y'all had me coming to some back roads in Indiana. I was like, oh boy. Well, I don't care if it's the north. It's the north. Man, it don't matter. It's stupid, man. I've seen stranger things. There's Hawkins around here somewhere, right? Enlightenment. I like being in control. I want to know. I ain't gonna front. I like it. I don't like my bow tie look all janky. I was pressing my shirt before I came, right? At the end of the day, though, God is saying, can you release that? Can you trust me? And this is what hip-hop is about. Having those conversations. It goes beyond the lyrics. It goes beyond the music. All that's an important part, but it goes and engages with the actual life. KRS-One puts it like this. Hip-hop is something that's being lived. Rap's just something that's being done. Both are important. Both are important, but there's a difference. That make sense? Let me get on this video, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. I know y'all got some questions. I can see it on your face.
I want to ask you about something that someone else asked you in the interview, and I thought the answer was interesting because I think it speaks to you and your generation a lot. Someone said, where do you see Tupac 10 years from now? He said, hey, I just want to be alive. That's real. That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person to that. Because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I can represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I live or die. But now, I cannot die with people thinking I'm a rapist or a criminal. I can't leave until it's straight. You know, I'm not suicidal. I can't go until y'all really know what time it is. And then after that, boom, it's all over. And we can see, you know, how it falls. But that's how it is. And the reason being is because if I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here. Because God has cursed me to see what life should be like. If God wanted me to be this person and be happy here, he wouldn't let me feel so oppressed. He wouldn't let me feel so trampled on. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't let me think the things I think. So I feel like I'm doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? Just because I don't have nothing to pass around for people to put money in the bucket don't mean I ain't doing God's work. I feel like I'm doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? Because these ghetto kids ain't God's children. And I don't see no missionaries coming through there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing God's work. My Reverend Jack do his up in the middle class, and he go to the White House and have dinner and pray over the president. I'm up in the hood, you know what I'm saying, doing my work with my folks. And just because I don't live there don't mean I don't go there. I got to go there because I can't hang nowhere else.
Interesting times indeed. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I can give you this presentation and more. But thank you for your time, and we'll open it for Q&A.